Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.
What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. Okay. Every writer is a whore. Wait. That was said to me when I was 8 years old. And it was said to me by famous Canadian writer Mordecai Richler. I had spotted him. I recognized his face from the back of a book that I saw, or that I had at home. I think it was the Jacob Tutu and Hooded Fang book. And I saw him from the street. He was sitting at a bar. I was born in Old Montreal, and we were at a relative's place. And so we were Saint Urbain, I think. Anyways, I saw him. I saw the side profile, and I'm like, I think that's Mordecai Richler. And I just wandered away from my parents, who didn't know any better because it was the 80s. And I walked in, and I tugged on his cardigan, and he looked down, and he had these glasses on his nose, and he said, yes. Totally not accommodating at all. And I said, excuse me, how does a person become a writer, Mr. Richler? And he looked me up and down, literally gave me a once-over like they do in Los Angeles, and he said, become a whore to the profession. Now off you go. So I love it. I'm excited about today's show because, as I just said to them off air, it's nice being around writers that have tangible successes, because I know so many that are always kind of on the cusp, or just floating underneath, or just crashed and burned, or whatever. And I'm one of those writers. There's writers that get jealous. I'm one of those that really enjoys the energy of seeing people successful in their field when it's the same field as me. Joining me today is a group of writers. I believe it's the core group of writers, from what I can tell, who were responsible for the stories in the Bill Burr animated adult series F is for Family. It had 5 seasons. Some of us hoped it would have longer than 5 seasons, but we'll get to that as well. And they are executive producer Michael Price, story editor Joe Heslinga, and I believe script supervisor Henry Gammill. Did I get all those occupations correct? Because I went by IMDb, and I can just blame them, right?
Well, I would say that one correction: Henry started out as our script supervisor, but then for season 1, but then by season 2, he was a staff writer and was a huge writer on the show. He was writing in the show in the first season anyway. He was we had a very small room then, and he was already contributing, but then officially became a writer in season 2.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take away. Here's the exact reason why. I am so not successful. I didn't know the hierarchical structure of the job positions, and staff writers sounded lower to me than script supervisor. Just did.
You know what? I think I should go.
Thanks for coming, man. It was good to see you.
And I had a great time. No, all good.
Mike, can I just start with you and ask you, Emily Towers, by the way, who's another staff writer, I believe, it will be joining us hopefully soon. When a team is put together for a show like this, and it's hard to kind of gauge that maybe because there hasn't really been a show like this, like the adult animated cartoon. Sure, that's been around, but this is the only one that I can think of that has nostalgia kind of like as part of the motif of the delivering the show. And I'm just wondering if there's like a type of person that you have in mind. It looks like a lot of these writers are younger, so they maybe didn't grow up in that era that work on the show. Can you just give me sort of an idea of how the writers were assembled and how the vibe between them work out?
Well, it all started, of course, with Bill Burr, the great Bill Burr, who his life forms the basis for so much of the show. And I met with Bill. Bill had, in many ways, Joe was the first person to ever work on the show even before me, because Joe was working for Vince Vaughn's production company at the time, for Vince and Peter Billingsley. And Bill met with them about talking about stuff, and they came up with this idea to make an animated series based on Bill's childhood. They got me involved because I had some experience with animation, working on The Simpsons for a long time. And we started talking about it. And, these things take a long, long time. And cut to, I don't know, like a year or two later, We finally got the show ordered by Netflix. It's time to put together a writing staff. We had a very low budget, so we couldn't have a huge writer's room. Joe was one of the first people to join the staff. You get to know Joe a lot when we were working on developing the show, and he was really funny, so he joined us. Emily was a writer who I'd heard of from my friend Mike Scully, who worked with Emily on a thing, and so he recommended her highly. Henry, I knew a little bit already from some other things socially, and I'm a friend, a coworker of Henry's dad, the great Tom Gammill, who worked on The Simpsons. And Henry had some experience being a writer's assistant, supervisor on some other shows, so we brought him along. But I knew he was hilarious, and I knew that he would ultimately start contributing. And aside from myself and Bill, who lived through the time period, our other foundational writer was a wonderful guy named Dave Richardson, who sadly passed away about 2 years ago during COVID times. I guess we're still in COVID times, but anyway, he's my age, so he lived through the 70s. I lived through the 70s. Bill lived through the 70s. Joe, Emily, and Henry not. So there was a lot of like showing YouTubes of things and like, this is what it was like back then, so it was great to have a little bit of a combination of both living through it and not living through it. But the one thing I'll say, I mean to cut you off, James, is the one thing that when we were looking at writers that really Bill really was responsible for that too, was like asking everyone, we'd have a meeting, like, what was it like for you? What was childhood like for you? And even like, Henry is only, you're 30, I think, right? So Henry was born years and years after the time of the show. But like everyone had like very similar stories of like bullies and crazy families and crazy dads. So that's all universal.
That's what's kind of timeless about it. It's one of the things I think that are timeless about it. It also has like an artistic kind of style to it that I think I already said a version of this in the intro, but like I could feel like the cars in the early 80s were leftovers from that era. So, you know what I mean? So there was some sort of leak into the next generation, but it's can I ask Henry and Joe, Henry, you can go first. What is it like to work in a writing room? Because a lot of writers that I know are dicks. A lot of them,
Sure.
they're just funny guys, right? And then some people can handle the funny guys, some people can, and whatever. But a lot of them don't mix. What's the writing room culture like? I'll ask Henry, and then maybe Joe can answer that as well.
It's the greatest job in the world. It's the best, and it really the energy, the vibe, as the kids say, it kind of starts from the top down. It really depends on who's running the ship. Maybe you can tell this. Mike Price is not a sociopath. He's a great guy. He's very nice. He's very funny. So that kind of sets the tone of the room, because I've worked in other shows that where maybe there is a sociopath involved. Maybe it's someone more high strung. That always trickles down. It's incredible. It kind of feels like being on, like a basketball team or something like that, where your role, especially if you're like a younger guy. And me as a script coordinator, I knew that like, all right, I could always pitch jokes. Like jokes would always be welcome. But like if Bill's going on a rant and pitching these great story ideas, that's not the time for me to be like, hey, everybody, I have an idea. Like you pass the ball to your star and you let him dunk the basketball. Like I'm going to set a pick for him or whatever. I'm going to just get this basketball metaphor stretched as thin as I possibly can. But it's just a great like team environment, and you go to work and you hang out with the funniest people you've ever met. It's the best.
Joe, that must be a universal feeling then. I mean, if one person feels that way, everyone kind of has to, because that would be the vibe of the actual place, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, listen, this was the first writer's room I'd ever been in, and before I got the job, I always thought that, I had known what writers rooms were like, but I was always like one of those late night writers where I would just sit in a room by myself and type and write jokes by myself. And that's how I started writing. So jumping into a writer's room with guys like Mike and Dave, these veterans of comedy, at first was really fucking intimidating, to be honest with you. But immediately, like, the vibe in the room was so nice and welcoming that, you just kind of jump in and, there's still, I had like my water wings on, like learning how to swim, but it was great. And definitely Mike and Bill both set the vibe and the tone for the room, and it was super welcoming and fun.
Yeah. It was a very small. Oh, sorry, James.
Yeah, please.
That's
No, please go ahead. Go
our
ahead, Mike.
first season, we created in like the smallest room you could possibly be in. It was like the size of like, I don't know, like a walk-in closet. And even to get in and out of the room, you had to like get up and like move your chair to get in and out. So, I mean, if we didn't get along in that room, we were going to be in big trouble.
We had one prison cell window that we had to share.
You could
Every
still
once in a
smell
while, a
Thursday's.
little bird would show up, and it was like you knew it was going to be a good day that day.
You can still smell Thursday's pizza on Saturday.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Question about one of the things. This might be called something, and I don't know the terminology, but maybe it's a sad clown thing. When I see comedic actors or when I see comedy writers find sort of like the heartstring part of the show, or the one that's more, that speaks to more our visceral kind of inside. Does that come from surprising places or the same source all the time? Like, is there someone that sort of specializes in that, not schmaltz, but you know what I'm saying? Like the good version of schmaltz, where it's like, oh, wow, good job. Do you have to be a certain mind to do it like that? Maybe I'll ask Mike and then.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so much of a lot of this show was based a little bit like on my experience working on The Simpsons, where The Simpsons is this incredible alloy, whatever, of like really crazy but ridiculous cartoon stuff, Homer falling down a mountain, but also incredible love amongst the family and pathos and things like that, and so much of that came from our ultimate, like our super executive producer of the show, James L. Brooks, who created Taxi and Mary Tyler Moore and directed like Terms of Endearment. This is that kind of mixture of craziness, funny, but also reality. And that, I think some of it, again, it still all comes from Bill's attitude towards life, Bill's observations on life. But I gravitated towards that. I knew we wanted it to be funny. I knew we wanted to do like a funny take on what the 70s was like from a more contemporary like point of view. We knew we were going to do that stuff, but the pathos of it and like this character, it came from the character of this guy, Frank Murphy, who is angry. Why is he angry? Because Bill always said like he wanted to be a pilot, but he got his girlfriend knocked up, and so he had to settle for life as a dad. And so like that's the basis of it all, of his anger at the world, why he's mad at his kids, why he hates his job. So there's a version of the show that could have just been, for lack of a better reference, like Family Guy, where it's all just crazy stuff happening, but we didn't want to do that. And again, like why was this show going to be different than we could have made? We don't want to make another Simpsons. We don't make another Family Guy. We wanted to do a show. And also, I'll say this: being on Netflix, where they really encouraged us to go with this sort of style of storytelling where it's sequential and serialized, and like every other show on Netflix, made that more possible and made that more important, because it wasn't just like a Simpson style where every episode is its own little self-contained little story. Like, so if characters are moving forward in time, then they learn things, they change. It just gave us so much freedom, and Netflix really encouraged that to do that. So like we started thinking of these characters as real people and like with real hopes and dreams and upsetments and anger and love, and just made it work that way. So we just leaned towards that.
It's kind of felt like if you were to make comparisons, that like the first animated show that had like a little bit of Wonder Years in it,
Yeah.
Like it was I don't know, Joe, how old are you? Because both you and Henry both seem like really young to be doing what you're doing. And I remember what I was doing when I was 30, and I'm not even going to tell you because it's so fucking embarrassing now. But like, you guys are working side by side with some pretty great people at such a young age. Do they haze you? Do they like, do things to you like a rookie, like on a basketball team or anything?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so there was no hazing, but the late great Dave Richardson would certainly put you through a little boot camp when you the first couple of weeks of the room. But like I said, he was it was like tough love. He would give you shit, and while the room was going, if I was quiet, he would text me and give me shit like, "Hey, fucking pitch a joke now." Like, what are you doing?
Hey, James, can I interrupt you just briefly? Henry somehow dropped out.
Yeah,
And
Henry, I'm gonna actually remove his
Emily
source
is
and
now
let him-
here. Emily apparently is now here,
Oh, I'm
waiting
sorry.
in the
I
waiting.
didn't
There's
even bring-
Emily.
Hi, Emily.
There she
There she
is.
is. Hello.
Staff writer Emily Towers, everybody.
Hello,
Thank you
hello.
for joining us. I appreciate it. That was funny. Well, not funny, but Henry's internet kicks and then Emily arrives, so that's good.
Switched it out. We tagged out. Just kidding.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you're here. Actually, I had a question. Specific, like we're gonna jump right in now that you're here. What was it? The character Vic. I find that the episodes that you were involved with seem to center a lot around him. I don't know if I'm mistaken about that. It appeared that way from maybe I was skimming, but it was like, oh, that one, and that one, or something. And I was just wondering, is he all of us? Really?
Yeah,
There he
I
is.
think so. I think so. He's a little of all of us, for sure. And any episode definitely starts one way, and then by the end, everybody's had their hands on it and everybody's contributed. And I am honored that Vic has made its way into so much of the episodes that my names are on. I mean, early on, I think we knew that Sam Rockwell was going to do it, and that was super duper exciting to everyone because he's very funny. He brought his own magic for sure too.
I'm going to play something because I wanted to play it for the person that wrote it so I could say this is amazing because I think it's the soundtrack of my head almost all the time. And I think you'll find it funny. Oh, you know what? Let me do that in a second. Well, someone else, because I put it in my trash bin. But if there was a culture, like there's stories like Dazed and Confused. The cast and the crew from Dazed and Confused, they get together, I think, once every year, maybe it's more than that, because they felt like a sort of sense of camaraderie when they were making the movie. And a lot of them did that movie and no other movies, and then they just whatever, but they still felt the connection. F is for family. Maybe I'm grabbing the Hallmark hokey angle here, but was there a family vibe among the people that were responsible for that show?
Oh yes, definitely.
100%. Yeah.
Mike,
and actually, I think this is the first time that we've all seen each other for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
For at least a year, because
Yeah.
the
For at least a
season,
year, because
season 5 came out a year ago, a little over a year ago. So yeah,
and it was all during COVID. So this is really and then we've all kind of gone off and done our own thing. But yeah, I mean, Evis for Family was a family for
sure
7 years.
I missed the question at the beginnings, and this was my first writer's room that I was hired on as a staff writer for the first season, and it was definitely it was learning everything on my feet. It was me and Mike Price and Bill Burr and David Richardson, so it was a very intimidating / I felt very lucky to have this incredible mentor or staffs to be learning alongside with. So it was great. It brought us all very
I will
close.
say right away. Oh, sorry, Emily.
No, it was a tiny room. It was a
tiny room. Apparently Henry is now in the backstage area waiting to come back in.
I don't know why it's not. Sorry, I usually hear a notification when that happens.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. There you go.
But there he is. But yeah, I mean, Emily came right in, and some of the most important things, one of the most important thing we did, because we'd written a pilot. I had written a pilot with Bill over a year before we ever got a green light to make it. So that first episode about the TV and the Magna on the TV, that was written almost a year and a half before we actually started making the show, because we were trying to sell it. And then it was okay, what are we going to do for the rest of the show now? What is the rest of the show? And so much of it was about these characters, developing the characters. And I have a very specific memory about working on the second episode. I think it's the second one, where we talked about the character of Sue, played by Laura Dern, and what is her deal? And the way we wrote her originally was very much kind of like a Marge Simpson, I'm here to support your father, no, you kids be nice to your father, and then we realized we got to give this character some dimension, so we were talking about it, and we had,
which I was very against.
Yeah, Henry was dead set again. He almost quit, as I recall. But so we had this thing where she had this job we called Plasticware, which was our version of Tupperware, and so we had that episode where she spent all day working on the Plasticware, and it was and then Emily was so important for that, of that thing of what is really going on with her, and she's not happy with her life. And I remember Emily pitching that moment of like her crying in the bowl with the bowl over her head in the room, and it just killed us all. We just were just laying around like laughing so hard, but also crying for her. And that was the beginning of that, and like it ended up being this giant character arc for her, wanting to work, and in the second season getting a job working at the plasticware factory. The place, but it all stemmed from like real stuff, and that was I remember very very specific memory of Emily pitching that crying into the bowl. Yeah.
There's another moment like that, and maybe I don't know who it's from. Maybe it's from Emily as well. But the relationship, and the way that was reconciled at the end between Alice and why am I blanking?
Allison, Henrietta Van Horn.
Right, and when
right?
No, but when the kid was like trying to woo her back, remember when they broke out and it wasn't working, and then what ended up working is when he didn't even know that she was there, and he was singing to the kids. So
Alice, I'm sorry, Alice, Kevin's girlfriend, Alice.
I have notes somewhere, but now it's too dark. But you know what I'm saying? That sort of like intermingling of emotion and humor. Is that another kind of moment like that? Because I thought the show was sort of known for that kind of thing.
Well, it developed along the way. Like we didn't know what it was. Honestly, like I said, like we wrote that first episode, and then we were like, okay, what is it now? So it was all these things kind of just moved as we talked about episodes and came up with like story ideas or a character. There'd be like a character which is like a throwaway character. Like for instance, there's a character named Ginny who was Sue's good friend, who we ended up writing about her. And so we ended up adding a whole crazy thing about her talking about her husband and why her husband isn't interested in her, Greg. And then we decided that Greg was probably a closeted gay man. And then suddenly he became a character, and that was so fun. That was just so fun. So things just grew kind of organically.
And it was always like a Bill mandate. Yeah. Like it was a big mandate for Bill that like it had to have an emotional impact for it to ultimately be funny. For all the wild jokes, like at the end of the day, he really wanted the emotional parts to be like real and relatable and true to life.
Bill would have to rein us in sometimes. Like if we got too crazy, Bill would come and be like, all right, we can't have like if we pitched this guy has 6 nipples like a dog. He'd be like, what are you doing to my show? Like, please, this is not the show I want to make.
Right. We would sometimes, because Bill was there a lot for the first season. Bill was in the writer's room almost every day, which is amazing because he took time out from a very busy career, as a comedian to really be there. And he had never been in a writer's room either. But then as we moved through the seasons, his career started really picking up steam even more, and he trusted us. So he would be gone for a while and then come back. So we would write stuff on our own, like, and like we're like, all right, wait for Bill, wait till Bill sees this, and see if he. The one thing I remember the most was in season 3, I guess it was, when they're at the movie theater at the drive-in movie, and Bill the kid had this weird traumatic dream about his parents being airplanes, having sex as airplanes. and the thing about Bill Burr is so wonderful is that sometimes he would skip over the stage directions. He'd be reading the dialogue. And so I think it wasn't until it was animated that he saw it. Or, do you remember that, you guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he tried to play it cool.
Got in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or you could see him like at a table read, like, reading something that we tried to sneak in and not tell him about, and like reacting to it live. Like, you can't hide it there when he's performing your lines in front of everybody. Like, you can only be so sly.
Yeah.
It must have been kind of a trip for Bill too, because when you hear him talk about his dad, like just in interviews and stuff, like he sounds like there's a duality of sorts, like a cat's in the cradle kind of thing, and then he ends up playing him. Like there must be some sort of catharsis there for him in that process. And are you guys, maybe that's the question. Does in those moments does a Bill Burr, like with his role in the show, convey to you what the emotion would be if you were taking nuggets from his life?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
And I mean, because we would all kind of do it too, like just use the show as in lieu of therapy. We're like, my dad was doing this thing that was driving me crazy, and now I'm gonna put it, something like that. So we're all guilty of that, and then we can all blame each other for it. It's like, no, that wasn't my pitch.
Well, there are often moments when we talk about our lives and things that happen, and that we all thought were normal, and then the rest of the room would go, "Hold on."
Well, the one thing that really did happen to you, Emily, that got on the show was the thing with the slip and slide and sliding out into the street.
Yes, sliding straight through the slip and slide into the street. And I'm also just thinking about David Richardson. If we want to go there, and how he learned to wipe his butt versus how everybody else learned to wipe their butt.
Up versus down? Was it that?
Standing up. He would do it standing
all
up.
the way up.
Oh, big guys do that when they have little arms. They do. Yeah.
Maybe that's what fun.
Yeah, he's a tall guy.
Yeah. He was a very tall guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend that when he told me that, I was like, why do you do it like that? He's like, I have gator arms. I can't reach my bum because I weigh 320 pounds. And I was like, okay. Okay, I got you. That's a bad combo, buddy. Like, yeah. Who thought of box 16? Because I thought that was kind of neat. It was like simple and really amazing at the same time.
That was a combination of a lot of us trying to figure out. We kind of paint ourselves into this corner of like, all right, here's what's going to happen. This was the last season. Emily wasn't around for this season. That was season 5. But like, all right, we got this amazing thing that's going to answer all the questions. And what is it? It's like, I think that was actually, it came from the great 2-guy writing team, Eric Goldberg and Peter Tibbles, who joined the show in season 2. They were with us for 2 and 3, but then left for season 4 and came back for 5. I think Peter Tibbles picked Bach 16. That it was Bach. Yeah,
Tibbles.
But it was a lot of work to figure that one out.
Mike had a great mantra in the room that was like, "Oh, that's a problem for tomorrow, me." Like we would just we would create a problem and be like, "Let's not worry about it. Let's have fun and do funny stuff, and we'll come up with something later."
Well, I think that's also a thing that I mean, one of my favorite shows, and I'm sure everybody's favorite show, is Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, that whole universe. And I remember reading about how they would paint themselves into story corners, and they'd be like, all right, now we have to get them out of it. So like the thing with the magnets, with the laptop and the evidence locker, like things like that. They would just paint themselves into this corner narratively. And it's like, all right, now we got to figure out how to get out of it. So we did a lot of that. And I mean, I think that show became a template for a lot of stuff. I was going to say one more shout out to Emily, which was this thing of like, using like little flashbacks and flash forwards and our little cold opens as a way to sort of shed some light on characters. And Emily pitched another great thing, which was like the first time we saw that Jimmy Fitzsimmons, the bully, like had a gentler side, which was that he was making like a birdhouse in woodshop class, and he was very proud of his work. And then he had a little puppet named Peppino and everything that he made. But that was like, I remember there was a lot of resistance on that from some other people in the room saying, "Why do we need this? That's not funny. That's not Frank Murphy. I'm going to put you through the fucking wall." But it was like, no, this is great. This is what Breaking Bad would do. So I think we use a lot of like, what would Vince Gilligan do? Was a lot of our work.
Why did the show last?
Oh, sorry, James. I didn't mean
Oh no, go ahead, please.
But then Emily also pitched a guy shitting so hard he had to brace himself on the wall. So Emily can do it all. She can.
She actually got up and demonstrated in that little room that day.
Wow, the sky dump. Yeah.
And that became they printed that out. They printed that cell out and put it on the bathroom key, like the little key that you used to go to the bathroom. So that for the rest of the show, this picture of the guy was like attached to the key to the men's bathroom. History.
Yeah. Why did it only last 5 seasons? I didn't read anything about that. I don't read about stuff like that. I like the creative side, but
well, I would say based on the way things are going at Netflix right now, like our 5 seasons is equal to The Simpsons 35 seasons because everything is getting canceled. They just canceled Inside Job, which is a really great show. I think they were making the 2nd season. They canceled it. Yeah. Anyway, Netflix has their own reasons. I felt we could have kept going for quite a while. We had season 4 came out and they got this call saying, "Oh, we love it. Oh my God, this is so good." And the next season is going to be your last one. And it's only going to be 8 episodes. And that's the way it is, so I don't know. They have their algorithms. They have their based on how many people watch it versus how much it costs. And that's what they said.
I hate that sentence. Everything about it. you know what I mean? Like the algorithms are figuring out if you guys have jobs. So we're like one of the great shows. I think I've heard some people involved with the show say like, you know, like it's better to like, you know, go in and out when you're still really good and hot and everything. And I don't know. I mean, from a job perspective, that sucks. But like, is there truth to that from a creative perspective? You guys don't want to say yes anyways because the job's right. Like,
Yeah, I wanted to run into the ground. I wanted people to be like, season 55, this one sucks. These lazy fat cats, I wanted to do it forever. Because I mean, we all love this show. Who wouldn't want to spend more time in that world? Like, we just, and you know, when you only get to do it's 6, 8, 10 a season, like there's so much stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor, and that like the next season would start and be like, okay, this thing we had to cut last year, like, can we work it in next year? They're like, we had seasons and seasons of ideas that we were excited about that we didn't get to do.
were you were going to age the characters? Were you going to keep going?
Well, I mean,
Like-
they already were.
Yeah.
As we move forward in time, I mean, episode 1 takes place in September of 1973, and the final episode took place on Christmas of 1974. So, like, we had birthdays and stuff. But we particularly, again, this is Breaking Bad too. Like, Breaking Bad did like 7 seasons, which took place over the course of 2 years or something. So we wanted to keep the kids that, you know, young and whatever. And we wanted to stay in that, again, this is from Bill too, like that time of the 70s, that early 70s time that isn't covered in like that 70s show, which is like puka shells and platform shoes and disco. Like, we really wanted to stay in that kind of like Serpico 70s of like everything's dirty and the gas crisis and inflation and all that bad 70s. So we never wanted to go forward. We never wanted to see like Kevin go disco or anything like that. So we took our time to like make sure every season was only covered like 2 or 3 months. But I mean, if we'd done like many seasons, we would have continued forward into time.
Oh,
like, yeah.
Okay. I just want to get back to the writing room thing for a second, because I'm just kind of curious about a couple of things. One, the process, like if people have their own process, do they have to sort of adhere to a scheduled process now, or do they bring the work home with them? Is it a better result usually when you work, you know, in a group environment? I'm just so curious about how all that works. Is it different all the time? Maybe Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you really can only do so much like prep work. You know, all the work is done in the writer's room, and it becomes this cohesive amalgamation of everybody pitching jokes and building off of something. Like, I might, you know, give a nugget of an idea, and then Henry will build on it. And at, you know, the end is always this amazing, you know, script that everyone has their hands in. So it's very much a communal process. And, you know, you almost like have this group think where you share the same brain, but maybe not accessing the same part of it at the same time. So we all have our own little, you know, personality that we can bring to it. But it's very much a collaboration for sure.
Are you guys allowed, and would you get high before work?
No. As far as I can tell, no one got high before.
What are you, a narc? You trying to get me in trouble here?
I'm not with the union. I'm fine. I'm good.
Although Dave came from a even previous generation than me. I mean, Dave and I were the same age, but he had been working for much longer than I didn't get started working as a writing. My first job as a writer was like when I was like 35, but Dave had been doing it since he was like in his 20s. But he remembers like going back to like when they used to knock back drinks when they were writing on shows like Grand,
like
on the shows that Hee Haw. Dave was a writer on Hee Haw. That's true.
Empty
Nest.
pretty crazy. Yeah.
Empty Nest for Malcolm in the Middle. But like those shows in the 70s and 80s, I think those guys were like doing all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah. I'm sure it's still kind of like that. You guys, it's so funny watching 4 writers be like, no, I have no idea anyone that smokes marijuana, in fact.
I know.
I mean,
when you go off and write on your own,
that's fine.
Nobody's watching it.
But nobody wants anybody high or drunk or whatever in the writer's room. It's like, that's counterproductive.
I wonder, just out of curiosity, I want to stay on this for a second because I think it's funny. But if someone did get high, no one knew except for that guy, and they just blew everyone away with their ideas that day, would that guy be able to be like, okay, guys, I was really stoned today, but see, can we start doing this that way? Like, I'm just curious what the culture is like, because do labor laws and unions come in effect? Like, come on, like, or do you guys just want me to stop talking about getting high before work?
I mean, I'm aware of a very famous show I won't say, but where the showrunner is famous for like drinking all the time. And
Gee, that narrows it down.
you
I
know,
know the shows too. I am very aware of shows that do partake during the day, during the room.
Mm-hmm.
But it would never be talked about on a podcast, for example.
no, that's for sure.
The closest I came in season 1, at least, I was a script coordinator at the time, so like, you know, I would be on the computer taking notes and taking care of the script and all that.
You really couldn't get out.
Oh, absolutely not. That's a nightmare. But like I remember early on, wasn't a working title for the show? It was like American Family or something like that. I forget if it was Gamont or Netflix. Somebody sent like an American themed gift basket, and there was like a 12-pack of Bud Light in it or something like that.
That's right.
So everyone would go home, and I would stay and I would like clean up the script and check the typos, print them for the next day, all that. Every time it was like a particularly late night, I'd say like, okay, I get to have one of the Bud Lights. And so like over the course of the season, I had a good amount of them. And then we were celebrating something, and one of our producers, Mike Legnice, was like, "Hey, we have those Bud Lights. Let's do a toast with those." And it was like, "Yeah, let's drink those Bud Lights that are still in the fridge." And there were like 2 left. He got mad at me. But
I think you got a janitor fired that day.
I might have, yeah.
Hey, it was a night shift. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we got to change the locks on these doors.
You can tell that you guys are friends. You know how like you can tell colleagues are just like, you know, they don't laugh at each other's jokes. They just, they go like that. Like it's interesting. I didn't think a vibe could be, noticed in a podcast.
I will say this. I will say this about myself is that like, because I've always heard that, like I had friends who worked on, or know people who worked on Frasier, the most amazing show, Frasier of all time.
One of the best written.
They would
shows
say
ever.
that like the writers' room in Frasier was all very dry, and they'd all be sitting around like this, you know, and then someone would pitch a Frasier line, you know, Niles, we have to get here, but the opera team is coming, you know, and then they don't go, that's good, that's funny, put that in, you know. But I'm like a laugher. I'll laugh at a joke the first time, and like the same joke the 500th time. I love laughing. So maybe that's sort of
sitcom
like
programming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
No.
and it's like a weird, I feel like you kind of need both. I mean, I feel like I thrive on the dry humor, but you also, I mean, when somebody has a good laugh in a writer's room, and you know when their laugh is like a genuine laugh,
Yeah.
Everyone will just like feed off of that, and it feels so good.
There's some moments I remember from the room that are like that, where like a thing would build, and we'd all just be pitching in. And the one thing I remember, we were all there for this was season 3 as well, and Bill was there that day. It was the episode. I think Emily, maybe you wrote this episode too, the one about Highlight. Did you write that episode? Yeah, you did. Where Kevin and his buddies are out there on the train tracks putting like weird stuff on the train tracks, and Bill, I think, pitched, they put a cow on the train tracks, and then when the train comes, the cow shits milk. And we just all laughed for like 20 minutes about that, and like we spent so much time trying to make that stuff work on screen, but like that's the kind of thing where you were just like, I remember Bill like saying, then the cow shits milk. And we were all just laughing and laughing and laughing. So it's fun to laugh. I like it.
It's great.
One thing I really appreciate about Mike as a showrunner, because like some shows you work on, like there are parts of the script that are sacred. You can't touch them. We're not changing a word. Mike is very like, even if this is my favorite joke in the show, if you got a better one, let's hear it. Like, because then I'll have a new favorite joke in the show. Like there's always a green light for everything, and just like rapid fire. Let's get as many crazy, hilarious jokes in as possible.
Well, that's the thing you learn early on, I think, when you're getting in a writer's room, is that you can't, especially if it's a script you wrote. Like you went off 2 weeks to write the script, and then you just gotta be able to sort of let it go and be okay with maybe somebody pitching something better. You can't get defensive. You can't fight for it too much. You know, then those are the kind of people that don't make it.
I find what I find really interesting is that my lack of experience, like I'm not trying to be a TV writer or anything, but so my lack of familiarity with your world and listening to you guys talk, it does sound like the dream job, Henry. I think it was you that said that at the beginning.
Yeah.
It just sounds like hanging out. Do you guys record the meetings, like just in case you guys miss something? No. Okay. Oh,
The best part is we have a person, or more than one person, that sits down and writes it all down.
Yeah,
for us.
like that was
We
me
don't even
season
have
1.
to do the writing.
Yeah.
That was Henry. for a little while. No, we have a writer's assistant, and there's like a big screen that just is dictating everything that's kind of going on. And I think it is quite a craft for the writer's assistant, for sure, of like what goes down and what doesn't. But it truly is like it's a great job. It's like a way high stakes hangout sesh.
Yeah.
with your friends.
Yeah.
And is it long days? Like, does it depend? Like, if does Bill ever come in the mood and he's like, "We gotta get this scene done"? Like, are you, is it?
I would
is it like
say
a work day
Bill.
like that?
I'd say Bill was hardly ever in a mood. Like Bill was always great. He was always fun.
And he liked to leave by 6.
Yeah, he liked to be home with his kids, or he'd have to leave. It's like I got to go do a set at the Comedy Store or whatever. But it all comes down from the top again. Like I've worked on shows where we worked every day from 10 a.m. till 1 o'clock in the morning every day, and like only a few of that was getting work done. The rest of the time was sort of fooling around or stuff, and so it all stems like often from like sometimes there's things out of your control, but like if you have a happy home life and you love your partner and your kids and you want to get home, then it focuses you to like sort of let's get out of here and get done by 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and I'll go have home.
Emily, Joe, Henry, do any of you have that problem? Because you guys look like collectively you're like 50.
I mean, me and I got 2 kids.
I have 2 kids.
Emily and Joe's kids were born.
Were
born while we were working on the show. Yeah.
Wow.
So
My little child.
Then I would be a bad boss to work for because I don't have kids or a family. I'd be like, come on, let's hang out. Let's order pizza. What do we say? 2 in the morning today? Does that work with everybody?
You don't want the like single lonely boss.
Yeah.
That's what you don't.
And okay, where are you guys all? Where are you at right now? Are you guys all living in like y'all at home? Emily, I know you're in Vancouver, so we're sort of like
I've
the
been back.
Canadian version of a paisan, whatever that would be. I think a beaver tail or something, right?
Yeah.
Henry, where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles. You want to know where we are? You want to know if we smoke weed? I'm getting suspicious of this.
You want the
But there's a SWAT team right outside my house.
Listen, the reason why spies work is because they ask the questions that professionals would ask. It's the same questions.
Exactly.
When you're a
I'm in Los
pothead,
Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles in my apartment that I've been in forever. It's great.
So what do you guys all like? I mean, right now it feels like this job is a dream job. I don't like. I'm not a guy that ranks things. I'm not going to ask you like, is this your favorite job or whatever. But the uniqueness from one job to the next, and when they're both amazing, is it? Are you guys like? Yeah, I think I'll be able to experience that again, or have you already? I'm just curious about it because I'm really digging the fact that you guys were kind of like a family. I don't know why. I'm a sucker for the schmaltz, but I like that.
I think a lot, most writers' rooms end up in some sort of family because whether it's dysfunctional or any, it's rare. And a lot of writers' rooms, they by nature don't last that long. It is sometimes like quick fire. Everybody's thrown together for long days, and then it's over. I've had like an assortment of experiences, and Episode Family will always like be very special because it was the first, and I didn't know what I was doing or where to park or who to talk to or how to pitch a joke or how it all works. And I was there for a long time, and it was on Netflix. Sort of, it was like a new platform. It was like 2015 when we started it, so it was kind of the Wild West of animation on Netflix and stuff. So it was fun. I felt very Episode Family. I was more included on huge stuff from the very, very beginning. I felt like very involved in the process.
It's kind of like a summer camp because we'd be in the writer's room. It'd last a few months, and then we'd have this big gap in between seasons, and then we'd like come back, and there'd be like some little bit things that are different. Maybe we have a different office or some new faces in the room, but it was always that thing you got to look forward to. And Mike was always going back to Simpsons, but for me, I wasn't on another show. I was doing other stuff, so it was always like great to come back and be with friends, I guess. Which is always fun.
Yeah, David Richardson in season 1 would say like sometimes you're on a show and that's a special one. You can feel it from the jump. He was like, I felt that at Malcolm in the Middle, and then he listed a bunch of his other credits. But he was like, I felt it on Malcolm in the Middle. I feel it on this one. This is a special show, and it really was. There's the writer team, Eric Goldberg and Pete Tibbles, who we talked about earlier. They left for season 4, and they were working on another show. I forget what it was, but I would get texts from them on the regular being like, "What's going on? Like, what was Mark's bits today? Like, what did you guys talk about? Like, it's not this room. This job is cool, but it's not the same room. Like, the vibe is different, and like we miss it there. And like, so they were really, really excited to come back and excited to have them back. But
Yeah, I was so lucky to have these amazing people. Part of the reason, I wanted Henry and Joe and Emily on this was because they were the beginning. They're at the start. It was Dave Richardson. There was a great guy named Tom Giannis who was our first season. And then we added the amazing Mark Wilmore, who again, sadly also passed away about 2 years ago now. He was there for seasons 2 through 5, Eric and Peter, Valerie Vaughn, Jessica Williams, another great team of Luan Thomas and Joe Pierulli. I hope I'm not leaving. I think that's everybody. Sam Stefanik, who took over for Henry when Henry became the writers, moved to the writing staff from script supervisor. And Sam became that. And then Sam was hilarious, and he joined the writing staff for the last 2 seasons. Also great. It's so much fun, and so just a great group of people.
Emily, before you were saying, I just want to, because I remember it now. You were saying about, not that it was intimidating, but maybe it was just the people who you were working with at that time when you first started. And then Mike, you said that she was amazing and that. I'm wondering if you changed your approach when you realized the sort of magnitude that you were in, or if the key was to just remain the way you would normally approach it.
I didn't change the approach because I had no approach. My plan was show up and sit in the chair and then it's true. It's like there's no training, I had been a writer's assistant on a drama on a big network Fox drama called Almost Human that lasted 1 season, and it was a nightmare. Sorry, Almost Human. It was just very long hours. It was just kind of a disaster from the get-go, and I was terrified, but I kind of knew how people sort of behave. But a drama room is different than a comedy room for sure, for like lots of different reasons. But it was intimidating because other than being hired by these guys, I also just hadn't spent much time with them. They all had very established careers, and I was coming in off as a former assistant. So I just kind of kept trying to do what I did in the interview, which was make them laugh. And then when that worked, I just kind of kept going from there. And then it's a lot of talking about experiences and stories, and then it's a lot of pitching off other people, which is such a fun and like scary. It's all about like brainstorming, vibing with other people, and like adding to their jokes without trying to take away from their jokes, and just feeding off of watching these guys like crack up at your dumb little like the things I did when I was a little girl. Like it was great, and I definitely just okay, this is working, let's vibe off this, let's vibe off that. And you gotta it's also like naivete, I should say. I didn't know.
There's a stripping of your ego too when you work in an environment like that, right? Like you can't get enamored by your own content if organically it leads in another direction. Mike, that's
right?
Fair?
Exactly right. Yeah, you have to be okay with like letting it go on and like the next thing, whatever. Okay, we're going here.
Yeah, but I had this thing. It was so funny. I didn't get to say it. You gotta let it.
Can't be precious at all.
On my very first job I had in a writer's room, like I spent the night before we started the script, going over the script and like writing down all my pitches, and then we showed up and like on page 1 they were like, this could be different, and then everything I wrote like didn't work anymore. So I was like, all right, can't do that. But I will say too, I want to say something too. It's like for me, it's so great to see you guys again, because even when I watched the show, I remember. I mean, it's fun to see it all together, but I have memories of specific moments of like when things got pitched, or when Emily pitched that, Henry pitched that. And so I just want to, I know I mentioned Emily stuff earlier, so I'm going to call out Henry and Joe. There's a moment when Joe, it's one of my favorite things. It was one of those things where like, you don't know where it's coming from. It was in the first season, and we had this character named the Lou, whatever the union guy, Lou Gagliardi, right? And he's in this limo, and he's got to leave. He's like, I got to get out of here. And he's talking to Gary Cole, who played Mr. Dunbarton, the head of the airline. He goes, let's get this over with. He goes, I got to get to Gary. I got to get to Gary by midnight. I want to be in Gary by midnight, right? And so Mr. Dunbar says, well, I want to be in Brandy by midnight. And that's his wife. And she goes, I'm Brandy. and then that was funny enough. But then Joe pitched that the limo driver sticks us out and he goes, and I'm Gary. And that's just, we all just exploded. We were like, can we put that in the show? Yeah, why not? It's so funny. We put it in. We ended up bringing him back. Gary came back a couple of times. And then Henry had a lot of great pitches, but it was the season 2 thing where Henry wrote this whole big scene where the family is leaving in the morning and they're all mad at each other for various reasons. And they're all like yelling. They're like, Bob, Bill, Sue, Mom, Dad, and then that guy Goomer is there, and he's like, "Hey, Frank, what are you doing? Are you saying each other's names?" He goes, "I'm Goomer" at the end, So I just such vivid memories of being in the room and hearing those things pitched for the first time, and it just makes me smile every time.
So, is it common for a writing room to be, what was it, a kennel or whatever the fuck you guys were using for the writers' room that you said, the little tiny room?
No, that was just because we had no budget for season 1.
The common season 1.
Okay, I was just wondering because that sounds like they're trying to make you.
No, but by season 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, we were in this like beautiful.
Let's talk about that room. Yeah, let's hear that.
Overlooking Sunset, on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. You could see the Hollywood sign. It was this all glass room. That was. Is
it like sports where you have to be careful not to get it too big on your in your own head, like a guy hits 40 home runs and gets a big contract, and then all of a sudden
we never had to worry about that. The offices weren't that nice.
No.
Yeah. Oh, we could tear each other down if we needed to. If you got a little too big for your britches, you're in the room with Bill Burr. He's going to eviscerate you.
Yeah.
I've heard from more than one people that there is a phrase that goes around Hollywood itself, or the greater idea of sets and TV shows and films and stuff. Have you guys ever heard the phrase "don't fuck the writer"? Is that something that's really does that really exist?
No, I've never heard that.
Why would you want to fuck us?
Yeah.
I'm just asking if you guys have ever heard the phrase. Of course, you guys are all very fuckable people, I'm sure. It's great. I'm just wondering, Mike, you look like you may have heard that.
I just heard the version of that joke, like that actor or actress was so stupid that she, fucked the writer.
And now, is that because the writer will then put you in?
No, the writer has no power because the writer has.
That's my question.
That's in movies. That's in movies. But see, in movies, the writer is basically a nobody, like a part, like an interchangeable part, because people will get hired to write movies and they get fired and re-brought in. But in TV, the writer is the king. So.
But if I may,
good thing to do.
If I may, the writer often is a little bit more dark and desperate, hence probably better in bed than the executive producer, I would say. So
I don't know.
Well, sometimes they're the same
That's
thing.
true.
Any writer.
That's true.
This is what I tell
What you don't want to fuck the non-writing executive producer. The non-writing executive producer is somebody with zero power.
Yeah.
Are there still associate producers, or did they stop letting people give away those like they meant something? Does that still
it's all kind of a weird, like if you watch TV shows and you see supervising producer, co-executive producer, associate producer, co-producer, it's all just kind of like a different name for a writer.
Okay.
There's a lot of
in
writers that aren't writer, which I didn't know about till I showed up.
Joe, can we start? Let's start with you, Joe. I'm going to go around. We're gonna wrap basically. I just want to know if you guys have anything that you're working on, or if there's anything that I didn't cover at all in F is for Family, which I'm sure is a bunch because
Joe has so much cool stuff that he's doing.
Well, like I was saying, in between seasons, I wasn't writing in a room. I started making documentaries, and so between, I think it was season 2 and 3, I started working my first documentary. It was about professional foosball, and it took a couple of years to get that done. But now I'm actually working on 2 more documentaries. The one I'm working on is about the NFT project, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and that's been that's taken up a big chunk of my life the past year and a half.
Okay, we'll look at Henry. The NFT thing. Sorry, I'm laughing at my own ignorance of what an NFT is. Like I've sat there and I've been like, okay, then what? Then what?
I don't
And
think
then,
Joe knows.
and then there's
what
that
NFT
place
is.
where cryptocurrency goes, where I'm like, but how do you establish the value? And then I just
You gotta watch Joe's
like, I
doc.
don't know what
He's
to
gonna.
Yeah, Joe will explain it all for you.
Yeah, here's
Okay.
my there it is right there.
Oh,
Wow.
That's awesome.
Green grab.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like
That's
that's like
a rabbit
3-hour
hole
podcast.
that is amazing and crazy, and yeah, hopefully done with it soon.
Did you say the name of your first doc?
Foosballers, yeah, that's actually
Very good. Very, very good movie.
The people that
Yeah,
play foosball are
movie.
fucking serious about foosball. I've seen that. I know that look. That's like there's a Rocky-ish look to them. Sometimes.
yeah, for
Yes,
real.
Yes.
Henry,
I am currently unemployed.
there's the writer I want to talk to.
Maybe something in January that I can't talk about, but we'll see. But I bought a filing cabinet on Craigslist today, so I'll plug that. It's
Everybody wants to know
really-
about your instruments on the wall
Sure.
behind you, Henry.
Oh
Everybody
yeah,
is-
I'm
is
recording from a pawn shop. No, I'm just a bass player. It's just something I've always done. I like it. It's in lieu of therapy.
The pond cat.
The podcast, baby. Yeah, no, follow me on my socials at Henry Gammill, Gammill.
Emily,
Yes. I'm in Canada currently, finishing up the last block of shooting a show called Animal Control for Fox that will be out February 16th. Joel McHale, very funny, like workplace comedy of animal control officers. It's been really fun. It's live action. So it's funny because I worked on F is for Family, and then I worked on Family Guy for 5 years, and this is Animal Control. But F is for Family and Family Guy. I said for a while I only worked on shows with family.
is it difficult to be appropriate at dinner parties when you work at the Family Guy for 5 years? Like, has that become a problem?
Yeah, when I coming to a new writer's room, it was a bit of a culture shock coming from the Family Guy writer's room, which is like a fossilized room from 1999 to to like a brand new Fox comedy. And yeah, I had to remember I wasn't in the Family Guy room. But that was a very, very large writer's room. I will say, plenty of elbow room in that one. That was a lot of fun too.
Mike, I'm sure you have a lot going on. I'm curious though. I wanted to ask you this because I heard this years ago, and I can't remember if I dreamt it, but I think I heard it. Is it true that a lot of people who write for The Simpsons are mathematicians or used to be?
Yeah, I mean, some are. We have a guy named Jeff Westbrook who's a PhD in math, who's been our writing staff for many, many years.
Other than comic
Al
book guy,
Jean.
what character does he write for?
Everybody writes for everybody. Everybody writes for everybody. Al Jean, one of our executive producers, is a very, very smart math guy too. Went to Harvard. Well, so many of that's the thing with the Simpsons people. They all went to Harvard, but I didn't. I went to Montclair State College in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. But yeah, that's a great staff. I'm so happy to be there. And they were so nice to me because they would let me every year and a half or so take off for a couple of months to work on F is for Family, and then my job would still be waiting for me when we came back. So I can't say enough good things about The Simpsons, and it's been really, really fun to be there. And I think we're kind of hitting like a kind of a third or fourth wind on the show right now with some really interesting out there unusual episodes that are really fun and really taking some big swings.
I've read things where like some purists are like, I can't believe they got rid of the live orchestra or something like that.
Well, that
Family Guy?
that happened
that
on
Simpsons?
Simpsons. That's
Okay, yeah.
kind of a business decision.
I was like, there was still a big orchestra.
sure, yeah, they would have a giant orchestra at this scoring stage at Fox. That it's only used so much now, but yeah, I miss that. But yeah.
Well, listen, I really enjoyed having you guys on. Mike, I reached out to you and you were like, you know what, we should have I was like, have 20 of them on. I don't care. Like, I think that'll be great. And it was great to sort of like see the producer guy bring together the writers for a show like this. Cause I'm I rank, but in Canada, which I don't know what that means in in the United States.
Canada
Probably,
is great.
but still, and I felt like I learned something today because you guys all do a version of the craft that I do. You know, I'm an author and whatever the fuck podcast host is. I don't write anything down. But the you know, to hear about the camaraderie and the vibe, and to know that all these different personalities are kind of can be melded and be the same, it's neat for me as a writer. And I thank you for sharing your experiences. I appreciate that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having us
Thanks for
on.
having us, James. This is a blast.
Great.
This is great. So fun.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Okay, you know what I'm gonna do? Sorry, I got it. You guys are still there. Hey, you guys just want to talk still, or
You want
Yeah,
to
that's where we should go.
Well,
Whatever.
no? It was me.
Not sure.
I'm just so
where
happy
how
to see Emily and Henry again and Joe again.
Yeah,
So.
that's great.
Hey, come on
Yeah.
to Vancouver. Hang out.
Sometimes we like
I don't
leave
know
the
how to-
guests and we'll just like we won't let them leave until they figure it out. So maybe I'll just
I see a live button.
no, I'm just
Normally
kidding.
it's a
Thank you
red
guys
button.
again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James. Really fun.
That was the writers from F is for Family. That was great. You know, some people don't think of the writers. You know, I do because I'm a writer, but you know, I never hear other people that aren't writers be like, who wrote that episode? And I think that it's kind of disappointing because these are the people that these are like the seeds of the story. These are the ingredients that made it what it is. And the one thing that stuck out for me that I really enjoyed was listening to how the part where your ego goes away when you walk into that room and it's everyone's baby. That's what it felt like. You know, it's like a collage or whatever of everyone's ideas, and so the ownership becomes that of the unit, which in a creative setting seems like it could be very powerful. I'm a typical writer of sorts in that if I hear someone cough, I'm just like, what the fuck? Who fucking did that? So I don't think I could be a comedy writer. However, what I will say is that you know, when it comes to animated series and when it comes to the kind of work that F is for Family undertook, they became kind of a quiet pioneer, I would say. Yeah, again, it was neat knowing that it was there was a multi-generational kind of viewpoint, like different perspectives from different generations were contributing to that show. And maybe that's what made it sharp, because you know, it's hard to imagine any show hiring a millennial to depict a boomer parent and his family in the 70s. It just seems like a stretch, and I would be, you know, remiss to say that it was not definitely a stretch, because it became one of the best shows ever. And yeah, that's about as much as I fanboy out talking to writers from F is for Family. But I appreciate that, Mike. Thanks again for setting that up. And I have a couple announcements that are coming. We have all that stuff that's happening at the network. I'm completely exhausted, but I'm glad I was able to speak with Mike and the gang tonight. So we will see you. Oh God, you know what I did again? Everyone knows what I did again. I left the intro in my folder, and now I have to do this to pass the time. Have it accessible like on the desktop. I was one of those guys that was famous for like putting like billions of things on the desktop, and then I had my buddy would come over and be like, why is my computer so slow? And he's like, you have a billion things on the desktop. Am I like expecting too much from these computer companies? Like stuff on the desktop? Anyways, we'll see you next time on Blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.